Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for joining me in person. Thank you for joining me online. Thank you for joining me on this lunchtime lecture. So this lecture is called Reimagine Research. And today I'm going to talk about how we can increase impact through strategic communications. So a little bit about me. I'm Jonny Prest. I'm the Communications Manager at Energy Futures Lab. I'm really into purpose and purpose setting, and I've got my own individual personal purpose written there. How do we use creativity to help leaders and innovators solve our biggest global challenges? I think this is a really important statement for me because I have the privilege to work with so many incredible researchers and scientists and research teams. And what astounds me and inspires me is the people that are giving their life's work to research and science. The difficult challenge is that the research can often stay within journals or publications or on websites and doesn't go wide and far and doesn't achieve the impact that it deserves. So my job is to be the bridge. It's the bridge between industry, academia, policy, and society. And through strategic creative communications, I help innovators and leaders solve these great, big, audacious challenges. And I put researchers and scientists into that category of leaders and innovators. I'm going to start with a quote. The quote you've probably seen 1,000 times because it's always all over the internet. Saving our planet is now a communications challenge. We know what to do, we just need the will. That's Sir David Attenborough. The interesting part about that quote is the will. What does that mean, the will? Well, it's impact. It's how we engage people. It's how we motivate people. It's how we encourage societal change. But for me, it stems from awareness and education. I think that's really the starting point. It's about having better conversations around big global challenges, from pollution, from the lack of biodiversity and climate change. So we need to look at it from the communications perspective, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So there are many, many challenges that we have within research in terms of engaging research. These are the three that come up over and over and over again. The first one is limited stakeholder engagement. Now, if we do stakeholder segmentation and really start to study and analyse who our stakeholders are, we tend to find that there is many different stakeholders within research, varying from the general public, which can be quite diverse, but also then looking at different types of industry and businesses and to policy. So there's many, many different people of many different demographics and geographics and behaviours. So actually engaging multiple stakeholders is very, very problematic. Just so that we're clear, today the majority of my lecture is talking about non-academic audiences. So we're not really talking about how to engage our academic peers and stakeholders, but out beyond academia, so non-technical audiences. And sometimes research struggles to sort of engage those type of audiences. The second challenge is this disconnect, and I've just mentioned this earlier, between academia, industry and society. So often academic reports and research, it's very widely understood and accepted and engaged with by academic circles. But beyond that, industry and society may struggle to sort of digest and understand the information that is within, say, white papers and briefing papers. And the third challenge that we have is understanding and measuring impact. Often the reason why this is such a challenge is that we've not truly understood what type of impact we're looking for. Who are we trying to engage with? How does it benefit their lives now and in the future? So that's a real starting point, and not being able to measure impact normally stems from the fact that we haven't really understood who is it that we're trying to impact, or what areas of society are we trying to impact. So over the course of this lecture, I'm going to address these three challenges with real tangible takeaway solutions that we can use from a communications perspective. So why do these challenges come up over and over and over again? And I'll talk you through why I think this is the case. It's information. It's information, it's data, it's reams and reams of copy and graphs and charts. And to non-technical, non-academic audiences, this can be very, very overwhelming. The reason why we have all this technical information and data is because it's factual. It's presenting real life facts and information that backs up and gives our research much more gravitas. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about facts and information. So conversations about climate change and environmental well-being are often unnecessarily polarised, clouded by conflicting information and confusing data. I love this quote. This is from Herbert A. Simon, who's an American economist and political scientist. He's also a Nobel-winning prize winner. A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. I absolutely love this quote. I think it's so relevant in terms of the way that we deliver information and data, etc. So let's talk about the facts about facts. Why do we always use facts primarily within academic presentations and communications? It's because facts offer reassurance. They're warm and they're cozy and we can rely on them. They provide a sense of stability and clarity. Within unbiased information and in an ethical way, it's objective and it's logical. So facts remain neutral and they're free from bias or emotion. And they are independent of perception. So they stand on their own regardless of personal views. And that's often why in academia we rely on facts, because they offer these three core areas. And that makes us feel good. It makes us feel like we're presenting something that's not so much up for debate, or it provides too much of a divided forum, because that's why we use facts to stop that from happening. But there is a huge but in here. I'd actually like to make that but slightly bigger. But it's because we're dealing with humans. Now, humans are unpredictable. You can offer humans facts, but ultimately they will have a perception of what they think. They will have biases. They will have their own belief systems. They'll have their own experiences, and they'll have their own ideas. So when we're dealing with facts, it's not always going to deliver exactly what we want to do. So when information is communicated to a spectrum of audiences, facts can often be viewed through a subjective lens. So although they're truth and they come from a place of truth and they're data, you're still dealing with subjective opinions and thoughts. So you can't fight facts with facts. We need to look at this in a different way. And how we do this is that we need to look at the reframing side of things. So facts alone can't change minds. Presenting more facts often fails to address deeper biases or perceptions. The challenge isn't the facts themselves. It's the subjective interpretations that audiences place on them. And also, facts may create resistance. They can sometimes cause disengagement, preventing audiences from truly absorbing the message. Also, when we're dealing with the facts, they may be confusing to understand. They might be struggling to actually consume that information and be able to understand it in a way that's relative to them, to their own belief systems and their own personal experience. So what's the solution then? Is that we need to deliver stories that are more thoughtful and constructive. Now, it's not about removing of facts and stop delivering facts, but it's about how do we increase the impact of our research. So we need to be more human. That's how we do it. So if we want to engage multiple different stakeholders in multiple different ways, we need to start speaking like a human and deliver stories that are more thoughtful. So authenticity is crucial. We need to understand our audience as people and not targets. We need to tailor our communications to their needs and to their challenges. And some key questions to ask here is, what do we want people to do, and how do we want to make them feel? So there is a process to this. It's not all alchemy in terms of creativity. And this basically is the structure and the process that I'm going to talk through now for the next 45 minutes. So let's start with number one. We start with category. So what is category? Category is the space in which the research sits in. It's often the value that it offers, or it's the problem, it's the solution to the problem. So that's where the deep work is here at the beginning. It's looking at our research, understanding who is the stakeholder. What do they want? What are their challenges? What keeps them up at night? It's been very, very clear about who the stakeholder is and the challenge that they face. With stakeholder segmentation, the challenge is that there's so many different stakeholders. So our research isn't for everyone. It's for certain different types of people. So when we're doing segmentation, we normally do the basics of geographic and demographic, but it's really important to get focused on behavior and understanding pain points of that stakeholder. And I'm going to talk through how we do that with the different stakeholders. And I have about 5 or 6 amazing case studies that have done that really, really well. So yeah, category is the space in which we operate in. It's where the research sits. It's the solution that we offer. It's the value that we create. And especially when we're thinking about benefits and we're thinking about long-term impact, we need to understand who it's for and how does it benefit their lives now and in the future. So that's the mind. And then we're going to start talking about the heart. So purpose is more individual. It's more about how we connect people in terms of their belief systems. How can we connect with them into their values, into their guiding principles, and connect with them in a much more deeper, meaningful level. So we'll talk about purpose and purpose setting. Then we move on to identity. Identity is the connectedness that we have with things. It's not just about visual. It's about the way in which we communicate and how we communicate, and the connectedness that we have with our stakeholders. Then we move on to story. And it is kind of like episodic like this. We do move through it in this way. And then we're going to talk about story and how we construct and create a framework to a really, really powerful story that's going to connect with our stakeholders. Now, the bit that most people fall down on is the delivery. We can do all this work, but then the final part is the heavy lifting, and it's getting our messages, our research, our content, and our communications to our audiences. And then measuring, but obviously we need to know what we're going to measure. What is impact? Who does it benefit? So once we know, we ask those questions in terms of our kind of objectives in terms of the research, then we can understand what we're trying to measure. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about category then. So we need to reframe the facts. So when we have our facts in terms of our data, our information, our research findings, it's not about diluting them, it's about distributing them in a new way, in a way that's much more resonant to who we're talking to, and it's much more sticky in terms of the facts and the way that we offer these facts and how we deliver them to our stakeholders. So we need to reframe the facts to drive action. And the second point here is actually from Peter Childs, the previous director for Energy Futures Lab. He used to mention this quite a lot about the consequences of inaction. So we often talk about data and we talk about information and we talk about how we need to create change or what the benefits that this research offers. But we should also talk about in the conversation what would happen if we didn't do this, if we didn't deliver the research, or if we didn't develop a certain technology, or if this didn't get incorporated into society. We need to look at the things that would happen if it didn't come into fruition. So how? The key with this is, you've heard me mention about stakeholder pain points. These are their challenge, their daily obstacles, what stresses them out, and then they mention about keeping them up at night. It's a figure of speech, but what it really means is, What are their problems? What do they face day to day? And how does our research offer a solution to those problems? Then this is all marketing 101, by the way. So what are the pain points? What do they care about? And where do they hang out? So where they hang out would mean online or offline, the websites that they look at, the papers that they read, where do they go at the weekends, what do they do in the evenings, where do they work? It's about understanding where we can talk to our customers in a more effective way, or where do we talk to our stakeholders, I should say, in a more effective way. Now, you don't have to do this on your own. This is really deep work. It's really, really difficult to do this. So the action here is about facilitating a discovery workshop, ideally with your stakeholders, to ask them about their lives, their work, their industry, their vertical and sector and category. What challenges do they face on a daily basis? And where does our research sit in this narrative? How does our research offer a solution? So you ask great questions, you'll get great answers. With active listening, you can use these answers then to go out and then start to construct this narrative. So, but category is the starting point, but it is literally just the beginning. The more that we can understand our stakeholders' pain points, the more that we can tailor our communications that's going to be much more sticky and connect with them. Okay, we have our first case study. It's a great case study. It's one I've been using since about 2019, since the actual project started. And it's about taking data, so we talk about the data and the facts, and turning them into action. And it's done through this idea of category, about understanding the stakeholder, who they are, what do they care about, and how does what role does our research play in their lives? And it's a project called addresspollution.org. So addresspollution.org, when it started, approached Imperial College London for the data. The data comes from the Environmental Research Group, ERG, which is the School of Public Health at Imperial College London. And it uses advanced air pollution models. And these models still exist today, and they're the models that actually aggregate all the data across the country about air pollution. So that data includes PM2.5, PM10, and nitrogen dioxide levels right across the UK. And that visual there kind of gives you an idea of what that data looks like in its raw state as it comes in out of Imperial College London. And it's geospatial data that provides accurate location-specific readings about pollution. So what happens with this data? So it's used in key London policies like the congestion charge and low emission zones. It continues to help craft policies aimed at reducing air pollution across the UK. Obviously, air pollution is better than it was, but it's still a problem, especially in built-up cities. And it's also used in health research, so it links air pollution data to health outcomes, examining effects on respiratory diseases, etc. Now, obviously, this research and data is super important. It's really key, this research and the data. But, another but there, but is policy and research enough to make impactful change? It's definitely a huge part of that, and it helps towards systemic change. But something I'll probably say a lot of this lecture is that we have to get everyone on the bus. And to do that, we need the general public, we need businesses, we need homeowners and professionals and families, all part of this narrative. So how do we make this data, or any data, more accessible to the public?
Pollution from busy roads, a coroner found today, contributed to the 9-year-old's premature death.
Ella's family didn't know the risks posed by air pollution.
Nobody in the UK knew. Air pollution is invisible. Its damage ignored. So we connected air pollution to the one thing nobody in the UK ignores: house prices. We mapped 1.5 billion data points, accurate to 20 metres squared. Developed a simple rating system and created an air quality report for every address in the United Kingdom. For the first time, we connected air pollution to the price of properties. The higher the air pollution, the greater the financial impact. Angry homeowners could lobby the government to bring forward the ban on petrol and diesel cars. Using our data, we designed an interactive type system that spiked when air pollution did. We ran on digital out of home and building projections. We targeted wealthy areas with high air pollution, property classifieds, and direct mailed estate agents. In a nation obsessed with property, address pollution was front page news.
The toxic air we breathe is a big issue for London, and the cost to their health as well as their pockets.
Also concerns they could hit London's property market hard.
That great idea of capitalism, property itself.
Under intense pressure, the Minister of Health endorsed us, and the government brought forward the change we lobbied for. And we changed the law.
Estate agents are legally obliged to disclose the information. The addresspollution.org website gives them.
As a result, property portals adopted our system, and the European Climate Foundation gave us funding to expand. Address pollution hacked the value of private property to solve a public health crisis, ensuring no family will be in the same position as Ella's. Addresspollution.org made air pollution impossible to ignore by making it illegal to ignore.
I love the line that was used then. They hacked the value of public property, hacking the value. And I love the word hacking. It's about, the coupling or the inclusion of other things to attach to the quality of research and to the power of research. So I think it's a really great case study. I just want to point out, I'm not really here today to talk about the value or the benefit or the impact that this project has, but really more the credibility of the creativity that went into it. Because I just think the framework of the creative idea behind it is something that's really, really inspiring. So the actual creative side of it was actually done by the Central Office of Public Interest, which is a non-profit community interest company. And they run lots of national campaigns to communicate science and data of our most pressing environmental issues to the public. And I would recommend checking out their website because some of their campaigns are really, really interesting. But even the thing that I liked about the campaign, that it wasn't just digital. There was online, there was offline, there was digital screen mapping, projections, there was print, there was the website, there was social media. It was a multi-channel campaign. And I think when we're doing campaigns, it's sometimes all or one or all of the other. And actually, when we're communicating to multiple stakeholders over a wide area, we do need to be thinking about online and offline communications. So who did so we're talking about benefits. I often mention when I talk about impact, I'm talking about who does it benefit. And that's because that's where we can measure impact. Well, it benefited everyone really, because it was all about the reduction of pollution, which is great for everyone. It primarily was focusing on London, although it's a national campaign. So it was looking at who does it benefit. So the reduction of pollution affects homeowners, it's benefits for businesses and the general public. It helps individuals understand air pollution's impact on property values and health. Again, that hacking, that coupling of the problem with something that people care about. And you hear that marketing 101, what do they care about? If you can figure out what your stakeholders care about and you can couple it with your research, then that's this idea of category or category design. And it led to systemic change, which led to the mandatory air pollution disclosure for property sales and leases. The campaign impact, it raised public awareness to new levels, driving policy action and individual responsibility. And I'm sure there's lots of data to go alongside with that. And if anyone's working in knowledge exchange or research impact, obviously with REF coming up in 2029, these are the things that we really need to understand, is like measuring of the impact, but really truly understanding what is impact and who does it benefit. So why did this campaign work? From a creative point of view, why did it work? So let's go back to that original slide, reframing facts to drive action. So the facts and the data were there, but we're reframing it in a new way that presents facts with clear consequences of inaction. So this is what will happen if you don't do these things. It's a really powerful way of framing the facts. So what were the stakeholder pain points? Well, in terms of the people, the homeowners, it was the lack of clear information on health risks associated with specific locations. So this changed the way that people were looking for property and buying property. That got people's attentions, especially if you lease property, you rent property, you're selling property. If your area is high pollution, you're really going to want to sort it out because you care about the value of your house, especially if you've paid a lot of money for it or you rent property. It was the inability to easily access or interpret complex air quality data before property transactions. So happening before the transactions and not during or after. So what do people care about? House prices. Of course they care about house prices. It's probably the most important thing, the most expensive thing that you'll ever buy, and people want to retain value in their property. So by coupling the pollution levels with the property prices, that created amazing dialogue and created a campaign that gained in traction. So where do they hang out? Well, for this situation or this scenario, we were talking about central London and at multiple online and offline locations, hence why it was a multi-channel platform campaign. So we talk about this health impact transparency. So the website provides a clear air quality report highlighting the specific health risks linked to air pollution levels at each location. So that literally is the homepage. You just put in your postcode. It uses Google Maps to show you your property, and then it will tell you the level of air pollution in your area. So, and then it's done through this rating system. So 1 being very low air pollution, and then 5 being very high. And in terms of data and delivering that data in a really clear way, that's a great way of doing it. It's not complicated. It's done through like very simple illustration and icons, and it's this rating from 1 to 5. It's really, really easy to understand. So I tested it out, and I didn't want to do my home address because my postcode would have been there, so I did Buckingham Palace instead. And that came out as, right at the top, 98, which is like very, very high air pollution. And then once you know that, then you can demand action. So by going that, it automatically allows you then to demand action and start to actually then like push on policy and get things sorted in your area, which probably means why Charlie and Camilla don't spend much time there. They're always over in Sandringham or somewhere like that because they probably know that. But that's interesting to know that the palace is in the right at the top there at 98. So I recommend that you do it in your own area as well and see how you get along. But it's such a very simple way of finding out what pollution is in your area. So literally all you do is put your postcode in. So let's move on to the next thing. So we've done category, now let's move on to purpose. So we've done the head, now it's about the heart. So we connected with people's heads, now we want to connect with them on a more meaningful, deeper level. So I'm not going to just talk about top purpose, I'm going to talk about complementary purpose. So at the very, very beginning of this lecture, I showed you my purpose, which is about using creativity to help leaders and innovators solve the world's biggest challenges. Now, you have to engage people and mirror their purpose, whether it is your own individual purpose or not. But you need to look at the research purpose, which needs to be a complementary purpose. So it aligns with other people's belief systems and their values so that so it resonates with them, it connects with them. So this is about aligning with beliefs. So connect your facts to your stakeholders' values and belief systems. So good two questions to ask here is what unites us together? How does this research unite us with the stakeholder? And what's our highest level of contribution? I love that line. That's the one I always use is, what do we contribute to? And then how does that align with their belief system? Again, this is a great task to do in your team. So ideally, if you can get stakeholders in the room, but if not, your own team within your research community or your research team, and then facilitate a purpose-setting session with your team that you can go through some key questions. I have all of these sessions that I mentioned today as templates, as off-the-shelf workshops, so do contact me and I can send you them. You can do them over coffee, it takes about half an hour or a few hours. You can do them outside of the office. You can do them with a glass of wine or a beer. That often gives the best answers, if I'm honest. But yeah, try and facilitate these workshops. You get some really, really great responses and feedback from them. Okay, so this is my next case study. This is a project that came from Ogilvy in Brazil. It was working with local hospitals and their health service. It was research driven, but just to give this some context, they had a real problem in Brazil with people not applying to the donor register, so donating their organs, etc. And they didn't know what to do. So they worked with Ogilvy to then come up with a campaign that would encourage people to sign up to this list where they would be an organ donor.
Amar, não tem comparação, torcida, não tem. O resto é resto, o esporte é tudo. Primeiro Deus, segundo o esporte, terceiro a família e quarto é o trabalho.
Prometo que os seus olhos vão continuar assistindo o esporte.
Que os seus pulmões continuarão respirando pelo esporte.
Prometo que o seu coração sempre baterá pelo esporte.
Hoje a maior dificuldade que existe no processo de doação é o sim da família.
Eu sou rubro-negra até depois de morrer, irmão. Minha alma é rubro-negra.
Ainda mais se quando eu doar meus órgãos, meu pulmão for pro cara do Náutico, torcedor do Náutico, ele vai respirar o esporte.
A campanha atingiu números impressionantes. 51 mil torcedores se declararam doadores, uma quantidade superior à capacidade da Ilha do Retiro.
A campanha do esporte, eu não tenho dúvida alguma que serviu para que, aumentando a oferta de doadores, a gente conseguisse zerar essa lista, conseguisse realizar realmente o transplante em todos que estavam precisando.
Uma campanha de doação de órgãos lançada pelo esporte está ajudando a salvar a vida de muitos torcedores.
Antes do vídeo, eu tinha passado 18 anos de diabético e 5 anos fazendo hemodiálise. E a vida só está melhorando, minha visão está voltando aos pouquinhos. Eu renasci de novo.
Doutor Rodrigo ligou para mim e disse: olha, a gente tem um provável coração para sua mãe. Você pode trazer ela? Eu disse: com certeza. Fiquei aliviado de saber que eu ainda iria poder ter ela.
Vamos continuar fazendo o esporte e vamos aí, torcida do esporte, vamos doar. Vamos tomar essa corrente, né? Não vamos mais parar.
What I love about that one is, again, it's about the hacking. You know, they hacked into sport, and in Brazil, football is more than a sport, it's a way of life. And they were able to leverage sport and football to then address a challenge that was obviously getting more people to put their name on an organ register. So again, but it wasn't done through a problem, it was done through a belief system. They tapped into the belief system of why that was really important to those fans, and then they were able to then get the campaign through to the supporters and the fans, and then again that then helped them to increase the numbers on the register. They do similar things for prostate cancer outside of football stadiums. So although this is slightly different, they will do prostate testing outside the football stadium, and if they can just get one person to come and do it, you tend to find that a lot of the men will follow because one person's done it. So it's that kind of, you can get critical mass and get people to believe in this, and then you can get such a momentum of people to act and do what you're hoping for. So let's talk about identity now. It's an unusual one, identity, because I say this all the time, but identity as an identity crisis, which is quite interesting. But when I'm talking about identity, it's about the connectedness. It's the connectedness that we have with things. So if I was to say Rolls-Royce, what would your thoughts be? If I was to say Imperial College London, what would your thoughts be? And everyone has a different connectedness with things, with items, with cultures, with organisations. It's a perception. So it's the connectedness that people have towards our product or our service, our culture or our organisation. It's a perceived space. And often I've heard it called a territory in someone's mind. So you can't own your identity. Your identity belongs to the people that you support or you serve. All you can do is work on your belief systems and your value and your category and your product and your research. And over time, if you're connected with your stakeholder and you understand their challenges and their belief systems, you can increase the profile of your identity and increase the value of your identity. You want to try and build an identity that connects. So whether it be your research or your research project or your faculty or your school, your identity should deliver a shared vision for everyone involved in the research project, creating a common goal to work towards. This helps align efforts across disciplines and sectors. So it would form part of your research strategy or your research development, but it's really, really good to have a research identity document about what you stand for, about what you believe in, about your sort of belief systems, your ethos, the foundational values, the principles, the vision, the mission statement. It all stems from your research. It's often not an activity that happens with research projects, but when it does happen, the results are super powerful. And then again, guiding principles. So our individual principles are different from our research guiding principles, but these are the kind of foundational values that make up what we do, and they will stem from the category and they will stem from our purpose, but it should be built on a set of guiding principles that shapes the project's intentions, ensuring consistency in values, goals and decision making. These principles define how we approach problems and solutions. And once we've done this work, it then creates this blueprint, and it can be literally a one-page document. It's good to have it documented, and it's something that everyone can kind of look at and approach from, through the project. And if you bring new people into your team, then again, it creates this blueprint. But the identity serves as a guideline or blueprint of how we look, talk, and act, influencing our tone, style, and the messaging. It's how we communicate our research to the world and engage our stakeholders effectively. So I've got an example here of some work that really inspired me. Now, to be honest, this is from Dark Matter Labs. Anything that comes out of Dark Matter Labs is incredible. I really suggest that you check them out. They are an organisation that works globally. They work with institutions and universities from all over the world. They work very direct with the government. It's very much built around the built environment. So Indy Johar, who set up Dark Matter Labs, he's an architect, he's a professor, but it's really, the kind of organisation is built around the built environment, about building communities, about infrastructure. And this project is called Trees AI, which is trees as infrastructure. And it's about how do we incorporate trees into the planning process of buildings and cities and environments. Trees must play a huge role in that, not only because they sequester carbon, but actually the root systems can help with flooding, it helps with mental health, it can reduce the heat in built up areas, so it reduces the temperature, they look nice. There's so many ways why trees need to play an integral part in the building and the infrastructure of cities, towns, etc. But in terms of identity, very, very clear in terms of their visual identity, very, very clear in terms of the language that they use. Also, like the tagline, this revaluing nature as urban infrastructure. It's about boiling down our mission and our values into really clear, catchy, attention-grabbing headlines. Yeah, so it encapsulates the mission. It shows how trees are more than just aesthetic elements. They are essential to urban assets. Trees AI, consistent and impactful visual identity reinforces its message. Some of this data and these 3D modelling drawings are used across the website. They look really, really, really cool. The identity helps connect with local communities, securing funding and driving support for tree planting initiatives. I come from a design and graphics background, and I always say that the first bite is with the eye, and that when we're approaching organisations with our slide decks, or we're meeting them in person, or they're checking us out on their website, we need to make sure that our identity is clean, it's smart, it's snappy, it's attention grabbing. It's so important. It's something sometimes often left. We don't apply as much attention to the kind of visual side of things and the language. It often starts with language, but it's the dance between the design and the words. And it appeals to policymakers and investors, presenting trees as essential infrastructure for resilience and sustainability. Okay, so now we're on story. I'm mindful of time. We should be okay. So as we come to the sort of the final parts now, once we've done our category, we've done our purpose, we've done identity, we're now going to move on to story. So it's about constructing this narrative, and it's not just about the words, but it's obviously the language we use, it's the way that we deliver our story. So a good story will increase positive influence, and we use story to inspire engagement and constructive action. I always use Star Wars as my kind of point of reference here. And the reason being is that it has very clear characters within the story. So we have a hero, we have a villain, we have a guide, and we have a special power. So sorry if you haven't seen Star Wars before. You should watch it. Just the old ones, the good ones. Don't worry about all the other ones. Some of you might disagree with that, I'm not sure. So you have the hero, which is Luke Skywalker. You have the guide, which is Obi-Wan Kenobi. You have the villain, which is Darth Vader or the Emperor, and you have the special power, which is the Force. You've also got the lovable rogue as well, which is Han Solo. It doesn't really fit in this story, but you could have a lovable rogue in there. So let's talk through the hero, the villain, the guide, and the special power. In every good story, you have these people. It's not just people. It could be experiences or cultures or behaviours. Now, just to give you the heads up, the hero should always be the stakeholder, but it can also be the stakeholder's stakeholder. Okay, so you could say it's the government, but actually it probably is the general public, because the stakeholder to the government is society. So actually sometimes you want to look at the stakeholder. That's always a good starting point. Then you've got to figure out the rest. Normally the research is the guide. Okay, it's the white papers, it's the briefing papers, it's the events. Now you've got to figure out what the villain is. The villain is often going back to the category. What is the challenge? What is the challenge that we face? What's keeping the stakeholder up at night? That's normally the villain. And the special power is the impact. It's the value of the research. So then you basically then construct your narrative. What's the hero's problem with the villain? How does the guide offer a plan? What's the call to action, and how does that end in success? If you can construct that in your story, you're nearly there. It's just then adding the creativity over the top of the words that you use, the dialogue, the voiceover, or the visuals, and the coupling between great visuals and this story. If you can get to this point and it's accurate and it works, you will notice the difference. You'll notice the difference in your slide decks, you'll notice the difference at events, you'll notice the difference when you're pitching or you're presenting. But again, you don't do this on your own. Do a storytelling workshop or a story session with your team and stakeholders to understand this. Again, you could do it in about half an hour with coffee and cake. A glass of wine, again, does help. Right, so delivery. I've got some really cool case studies on delivery. So I've got two different case studies here. Again, it's from data, but this approach is for gamification. We've got two. We've got How Bad Are Bananas, which is the carbon footprint game. And we've got Mount Resilience, which was a project that we had colleagues that worked at UTS in Australia. So How About a Bananas actually comes from a book. And this book was written by Professor Mike Berners-Lee, who's a professor at Lancaster University. And it's all about understanding carbon. We talk about carbon all the time, but we often don't know what it means, like a carbon footprint or carbon impact or carbon credits. What does that mean? But this book demystifies that and tells you how much carbon it costs to run a car, or how much carbon is in when you build a house, how much carbon is in a steak, or how much carbon is in an avocado. And this book is all based around that research. It's all based around the data that comes with that. And Mike's research focuses on sustainable food systems and carbon metrics, and this provided the foundation of the book and then the game. Okay, so just to kind of give you an idea of what the game looks like. So which has higher carbon footprint? 1 kilogram of cheddar or 1 bottle of wine. It's either British or French. Right, for cheese, do you want to put your hands up? Who do you think is more carbon in cheese? Okay. Your hands are almost going up. And then who thinks there's more carbon in a bottle of wine? So about 50-50, we're about halfway there. Well, it's actually the cheese. So yeah, there's 11.8 kilograms of carbon that come out of 1 kilogram of cheese, and then 1.3 kilograms of wine. Now, obviously, there are variables depending on the wine and the cheese, etc., etc. But it's rough estimates. But it's great because it's visual. You know, using like graphics. It's schematical. You know, like if I said to you that your heart weighs 3 kilograms, which is the equivalent to 4 oranges, you know, I might not know what 3 kilograms is, and that's completely wrong, by the way. I've just made that up. But I've probably got an idea what 4 oranges weighs like, and that's why this game is so effective. Like you actually get to see it and understand how it works, and it works really well in schools, but it works really well for everyone. So the game was developed by Dr. Emma Fieldhouse, who's an amazing person, and she travels all around the schools, etc., with her team doing this game. The game challenges players to learn about their carbon footprint in a fun, interactive way, and it's suitable for all ages, combining learning to play to leave a lasting impact. And you can see in the visual there, can you see like higher or lower? And then the children have to place it onto the side that they think's got the higher carbon footprint or the lower carbon footprint. And that's why this game is so brilliant. And it really, and it's not just about young people, really get to understand the levels of carbon and how they work. So the next case study is Mount Resilience. So this was the University of Technology in Sydney were involved in this, and it was with the Australian government. So I've just got to come out very quickly. If this doesn't work quite well, I just need to move that so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, let's see how good the internet is. But when dealing with sustainability and energy and climate, there are so many different areas that we have to deal with. Oh.
We're so glad you could make it. I'm Ursula, and welcome to Mount Resilience, a town that's built to adapt to our changing climate.
Okay,
This is no utopia. The people here are dealing with the same things we are.
Okay, I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to try and skip that. I wasn't expecting the voiceover to come in. But you kind of get the idea. If you've ever played SimCity or anything like that, there's other games like this, you probably know more than I do, in terms of like building up cities. But obviously you've got aviation there, you've got the sea, you've got towns, energy. And it's about then how you build this city so that it's more equipped to tackle climate change. Obviously Australia's different. They've got fires, you've got severe storms, etc. So I'll let you kind of play that in your own time. But it's a great way of using data and information within gamification. It's way more interactive. It's much more interesting. And if you learn in that way, then you can learn more about these kind of big global challenges in a much more fun, interactive way. I'm going to switch that off because that music's going to be off-putting. Let's go back. Then we're going to go in. Right, okay, so last is the measuring, the impact. How do we measure impact? So we've identified what our benefits and who they're for, but traditionally getting published in prestigious journals has been the ultimate goal. But impact goes beyond academia, research. Research needs to make a difference in the real world. Publication is just the beginning. Impact comes from pushing our research out and not waiting for it to be pulled in. So all these projects and case studies, there is an element of planning and creativity. And to get them out there, it takes work. It's the heavy lifting to push them out there, to get these big changes, to get policy change, to get public buy-in. Successful communication creates change, forms partnerships, and influences policy. I've mentioned this a few times about these objectives, being very, very clear from the beginning about what is it that we're trying to do, what is it that we want. Because if you can be very, very clear about that, then you can measure. Goals might include X number of views or media coverage, but without clarity, campaigns fall short. If it is about systemic change or policy change, again, we need to be very, very clear about what is the change that we're trying to create. Now, these are lifelong questions. I'm not going to give you like takeaways. I'm just going to give you a set of questions to ask yourself, your team, and the people around you. Is, do we understand the needs and wants of our stakeholders? Can we tap into their belief systems? Do we have a magnetic message? Does our design and language work? And are we measuring for impact? You could almost print them up and have them up on the wall. We should be asking those questions on a daily basis. Love this quote. As clinical educators, our job is not to create knowledge obscura. The knowledge we create needs to impact our communities. That's from Daniel Cabrera. A bit of reading. So a lot of what I was talking about early on in this lecture comes from this book here, Story or Die. Fantastic book. It talks about the facts and how we reframe facts. Purpose setting, starting with why, being creative, how Pixar started, sticky ideas and identity made to stick, and purpose. ZAG is all about thinking differently and approaching identity in a new way. So some really, really good books there to go away and read. But yeah, thank you for your time. Are there any questions? Any online? Elise? Yeah, go on, sure.
Yeah. That was really interesting, and some of the case studies you presented were really cool. I was wondering if you also might have some advice, perhaps for early career researchers working earlier in their career, and maybe they don't have the kind of budget or access to resources necessarily that some of the bigger projects might have. How could they kind of apply these principles that you've talked about, but at a smaller scale, something that's more like, bite-sized, I suppose?
Sure. That's a great question. Most of the creative bigger projects, I think the creative is normally the veneer. It's the icing, it's the cherry on top of the cake. Actually, where the important work is the category. I'd always start with category. So spending time with your stakeholders, and I mean really when I say meet them where they are, that's not a figure of speech. I mean, like really meet them where they are. Go and spend some time with them and ask them the question, what problems do you have? What problems do you have on a daily basis? Or what problems can I help you solve? And they will tell you specifically what it is that they need. And that can be from any type of research point of view. If you can understand where the stakeholders, where they are and what their challenges are, anyone can do that. And I would say that's where the work is. If you can figure that out and then start tapping into their belief systems, what's important to them, what are their values, I'd say just focus on that, because you can use that in slide decks, you can use that in research presentations, you can use it in the research, you could create a website, you could start a podcast, you could do anything with that with limited resources. But yeah, start with category. Any other questions?
There is one online.
Yeah.
They've asked, how do you create a magnetic story when the audience have different problems and problems which is not within their remit?
If you have multiple different stakeholders with multiple different problems, there's a few different things you can do. Is deliver different stories to different people is a way of doing it. But often you find that there are shared problems and there are shared difficulties that people are having. So you can then tap into that and deliver it. There is a process to this, and the storytelling workshops where you start to go through the hero, the villain, etc. You'll start to see algorithms. You'll start to see patterns that people often have the same problems. And when use the kind of the Toyota 5 why principle, and why do they feel like that, you tend to find that you arrive at a place where people do have the same problems. And it's often about security, it's often about happiness, it's often thinking about infrastructure and society as a whole. So you tend to find that the problems are shared, but you have to go through this process of asking why do people feel the way they do, what are their kind of shared problems.
And one more question says, do you think there is confusion between what is co-creation, education, communication and engagement?
Well, it depends how you're doing it and who it's for. So co-creation and co-production, they're all, the key with all of this is getting around the room and having a good conversation about what are our challenges and where are our shared beliefs. I don't think the terminology is different really. I think it's the same. I think it's just how we approach these things. But again, it's about bridging this gap, the gap between our research, academia, policy, and the general public. And the more that we can spend time having better conversations with the people in the room, then that's good. And there's I've got some really great examples where co-creation meetings, workshops have worked really, really well. And by getting everyone in the room and talking about these things, then ultimately it's going to lead to a better research project. No? All right, well, if you have any more questions, please email me. This video will go out in a couple of weeks. But again, if you would like to know about more case studies, more projects, or any of this lecture that I've talked about, you'd like to get more detail, then please email, get in touch, and yeah, I can help you from there. All right, thank you. Cheers, thank you.